case, I will. Thanks. Okay, so hi everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to be well. First, I'm Matt, and I'm behind Fantasy Atlas. I make maps for tabletop games that we all know and love. You know, classic, obviously, Dungeons and Dragons and beyond. So yeah, this is something that I'm doing. I've been doing now for a couple of years. I've been trying to do it a bit more of a professional capacity over the past year or so. It all started up about 4 years ago when I started DMing, and I think as a lot of us do, we get involved in it. We play with our friends, and then we become a little bit obsessed, and then we start to become ever so more involved. And so I kind of ended up turning my love for art and drawing and things like this, and really focusing on maps because that's what I really enjoyed creating and I wanted to do more of. So anyway, yeah, that's a very quick, very brief overview of me and how I now make maps and try and do it professionally. And I just wanted to share with you all my process, how I go about going from really loose, very rough sketches through to the final pieces. In that, I'm hoping to give you a complete breakdown by going through my latest map and showing you from design elements of why I put things where to then also the how I bring in which colors and things like this. So it'll be a very comprehensive breakdown of my process. And then I'll also be doing a quick maps kind of section towards the end and an actual drawing alongside this where maybe with chat, we'll come up with a suggestion for a map and I'll show you how you can throw together like a really quick, rough and ready map just for, you know, tonight's game, or even I've thrown together maps whilst my players have been talking, you know, 5-10 minutes and you just quickly put something together that they can get. Yeah, hopefully that will be helpful for everybody. So anyway, I guess let's get started and get into this. I'm going to drop this down and just show you a better view of some of my most recent maps. You can see that here I've got a series on the left-hand side of jungle maps. I have some deserts, some snow maps, and also your more classic kind of dungeons, which I prefer to do in more of an isometric or kind of fake isometric style. I think this just enables you to get more detail in there, really, and a better idea to the players of what they're seeing. So, for example, if I go down to here with this fake isometric style, you can see that the players just get a lot better idea of actually what's going on, I think. They can see quite clearly obstacles and how they can interact with them and things like this. Whereas with the top-down map, they're great for landscapes and kind of overarching, and also I feel like quite for more emotive pieces where you want a bit more atmosphere, and they can work fine for when you're in the outdoors and things like this. So I guess this is step one of the map making process is depending on what I'm doing and what I want to show, that to me dictates the perspective that I'm going to use for that map, whether or not it's going to be top down, true isometric. What I mean by true isometric is in the top right here, you'll see like that the grid is like a little diamond. And that's because it's true isometric. Whereas down here, I've done what's called kind of like a fake isometric, where the grid is still perfectly square, but it's got that 3D feel. That's something that I've been working on. Is very tricky and can look quite ugly if done wrong. But it's something that I think it gives utility to the people who prefer not to use isometric grids. They still get a nice 3D feel. So yeah, that's very much kind of the first aspect for me of map design. Here I'm going to show you a little bit more of a close-up of this one, I think. So with this map that we're going to be going through today. This is one of the latest maps that I shared. First up, the very first thing that I do is I start thinking about, like, how am I going to challenge my players with this map? What hazards or elements can I introduce to this to make it difficult to them just to kind of move around or to have to think about their placement? So it's not just like a big open field that they can run around, and the archers can stand 600 feet back and just volley at whatever enemies you've got. So with that, I wanted to make it so that it's quite restricted in that you have a compound area here in the center that's going to be hard to get into ultimately. It's also got a nice kind of water defense as well, which is broken through, and it causes mobility difficulties down at the front as well here. So it's going to get harder to kind of even get towards it. Now I've also kind of included down here, just as a little cheeky something, a spiked trap that has clearly gone off at some point in the future. Some point in the past. But what your players obviously don't know is whether or not any one of these other tiles could also be another one of these traps. You could easily have them tucked away elsewhere on the map. So I think these, for me, having like this little trap visible is a nice way to warn the players, look out for this. But chances are, mid-battle, they're going to forget about that, and it's going to catch them unawares, and they're going to be like, that thing, it's little elements like that that I like to include in my map design, so that I don't know, I think it just makes it more interesting for the player, and also for me when I'm drawing these, it makes it more interesting to make them. So I'm going to jump into another image now, and I'm going to show you what this map started as. So this is obviously quite finished, polished, and very clear as to what it is. But I'm going to hop right back to the beginning now and show you just how bad it can be when it starts out. So here. So yeah, this is a bit of a far cry, I feel, from the finished piece. But you can see all you need to do in the opening stages. So after you've thought about, what you want to convey, what you want to challenge your players with, and you've thought about the perspective, then you just want to get it down onto paper as rough and ready, or in this case, digital. I should note at the start that I use Procreate for all my map making. I do that for a couple of reasons. The first is because it's nice, easy, kind of light and portable. It's just on my iPad. It's good to go. No matter where I am, I can do some map making and some design. It's also very cheap. I think I picked it up for like $10 a couple of years, 6 years ago or so. It's still going strong. And so I prefer over other systems like either Photoshop or even GIMP, which is free software out there to use, which is a great starting point if you just want to dip your toes in digital map making. But obviously you're limited to a larger laptop or computer or something like this, and it can be harder to kind of dip in and out. So I much prefer Procreate, and I've deliberately built all of my map making just categorically around that. Anyway, brief aside as to why Procreate, but back to the map itself. Yeah, you just get down everything as quick as possible. Start with quick line art, a little bit of kind of color, and then you're away. You can see that I've just blocked in the rough shapes, and then it's going to be good to start processing and moving everything through to this final image. So what I'll do now is I will show you, I basically apply the same 4 or 5 steps to every item that you can see. So from the crates through to the actual structure itself, to the river, to all of that, it's exactly the same process each time. And it's pretty simple. It also means that if you mess up at any stage, you can go back to a previous stage. You can change things differently, and it makes things very great utility to the way that you're working. So flicking over to the best way to show this probably is if I just actually drop down into asset creation. So everything and anything that I make on that map that you can see has been made with this process. And basically, you start with step one, which is just very rough, very ready, just shapes of what you're wanting. So obviously I want to do a series of crates here, and I'm just starting with a very rough kind of line art to get that. And then you just refine, I know but over time with practice, I refine that image to this, to the next step. And this process can just keep on going. You can loop this, you refine the image, you don't quite like it, and then you refine it some more. And then eventually you wind up with something that you are happy with the line art. So that's what I aim for, is some good, strong line art to start off with. And then this means that from here, that's then almost kind of saved at that point, going forward from there, I then just block out the overall shape in color so that I've got everything to work with there. And all that is to, I can give you an example of how I do that down here. So to kind of block in that color there, all you do is you just, go through, get this into the color that you want, or a color, it doesn't really matter. And then I get the eraser and I just start cutting that away. Oh, Scott, do I use reference for images or boxes from memory? That's a very good question. So both. So ultimately, the first sketch, the rough kind of pencil blocky shapes, that is absolutely just done from imagination. That's more of me just looking at what shape do I want overall, and then refining it. The first pass, I won't use any reference. And also with crates, over the years or so, I've drawn a lot of crates, so I've got a pretty good idea of what they look like. But what I will do with anything I am unsure about, or even, if I'm getting bored of the way that I'm doing crates, if I'm just finding that they're just a bit samey, absolutely, bring up Google image search and then just start flicking through for, medieval crates or kind of like map crates or anything like this, any of these terms, and you'll get, as you know, with Google Images, a whole host of stuff to work from. And then that can really add variety. And even when you think you know what a crate looks like, it could be nice to see something fresh to work from. So yeah, absolutely, that's a really good question. With everything, if it's new, old, or anything, references are very good for adding variation and detail and all of these kind of things. They're perfect for that. I hope that answers your question. So yeah, so once I have the line art to a level, I just block it in with this color, and then what that enables me to do is, what I can do, especially in Procreate, is I can select this layer, and then when I bring up a new layer, anything I do in new color, ideally, will stay within those bounds. So that's effectively creates a nice little area for me to work within, and it won't go outside of that, So it gives you a lot of flexibility. You don't have to worry about staying within the lines. So once you have the line art done, you block in the back color of some description, that's when you can start bringing on the detail. And the detail in this stage here is ultimately broken down into two key steps. One is the texture and the color of the piece, and the other is the overall shading and lighting. And I quite easily, let's see if I can open up the layer stack here. And colors, yes. So you can see, forgive my huge amount of messy layer stacks. It looks like chaos, but it makes sense. So yeah, exactly. So that was the base color. And then on top of this, to add all these details, and I can get rid of you as well. Excellent. So to add all these details, I've just gone through adding new layers, bringing on different textures, a little bit of color there. Boxes tend to have knots and things like this, and some darker speckling is a good way of adding that. And then I highlight around it. To do these things quickly and effectively, this is another reason why Procreate's so great, is that they have a massive selection of predefined brushes and things like this that have all these different textures. So, for example, Rusted Decay, if I select this box here, open up a new, and then go to nice kind of like darky red color, I can just do this. And you can see that I start to bring in texture to this piece. Just here. And you can just do this again and again. It's a very quick and easy way to take it from just a plain brown, boring box, just to give it some relief, you know? And then on top of that, like I said, it's just highlighting, adding a couple of different colors, and just playing around with it and seeing what textures you enjoy. So very briefly, very quickly, because I do have obviously a limited time to go through, that's how I go about adding colors and textures to the piece. And then over the top of this, over here, we have the shadows. And the shadows can quite easily be broken down into three main aspects. So I have like an overall general global lighting, where I just drop in some shadow around the outside and just focus. You just want to pay attention to where you want to focus the eyes. So I want the eyes to be focused on the high points. So I want everything else to be recessed. So with that, just a soft round brush on a low opacity to pick out those areas. And then I go for the midtones here and bring in the midtones so that we're just knocking those lower crates back a little bit more. And then on top of that, another one again, just knocking back the further and the lowest pieces. Just to really add volume and to push the back towards the lower areas. So when you combine those two techniques of texturing and adding shadows and things like this, and for me, I find it very good to keep those two things separately, because again, a lot of this is working non-destructively. So at any point in this process, I can go back to the line art, I can go back to just the blocked base color, I can change the textures, I can change the lighting, and it doesn't undo any of my work, which is really important for if I want to use this box of crates in a different map that has a different color palette, or if I want to change them around a little bit or anything like this. It saves a lot of time in the long run. So it's well worth, I think, working in these ways that are non-destructive. And then with regards to the last step in the process, it's drop shadows and how the asset is going to sit on the map itself. Yes, I am indeed using Procreate to use this. So in these shadows here, I'm doing a hard shadow around here to really step the boxes off the background, and I'm doing a softer shadow, a wider shadow as well. And what that means is that when you take this out of this and drop it into any other map or any other area, it will just stand off. And it means that it won't blend in as much to any others. So that's a very quick, very easy rundown, or well, very easy, a simplified rundown of how I go about. Like I said, this process is pretty much what I apply to everything, from trees to rivers to roads to everything that I do. So if you have any questions about that, please do drop it into chat. I am monitoring. I'm happy to answer anything I might have missed. But that is if you want to work towards a more finished and more polished map, that's definitely, for me, the process to go down. So with that in mind, with that process that I use, this was step one in this jungle map, was to go through, refine the line art so that it was just this. How are you making the trees and rivers? Yes, I will get to the trees and rivers in just a minute. I'll just quickly cover the base, but I'll show you some. I've got some fantastic brushes that I use for trees, and a couple of element brushes as well that are in Procreate that I use for the rivers that add like a really good texture. So for the base temple, quick bit of line art to get it all together and pull that in, and then it was just, this is the same bottom layer that I said, the no worries. So the base here is just textured. That's just one flat, large piece of texture, and then on top of that, I'm applying a couple of highlights and my shadows, and that's exactly like I said with the crates. That's what it is. So you do this, and then you repeat it, and you do it for the other elements that you want to bring in. But with this overall, I'm thinking about where I want the eye to go. So the highlights are a good way of showing this, is that if you see with the highlights, they're all focused around the central area and the stairs. And that's because that's where I want people to notice. That's probably where the main action is going to be. You know, you don't need like these little corners down here to be that detailed, because nobody's going to look at it twice. So you can save yourself some time and also stop trying to draw people's eye to other areas by really honing down and focusing on the central key areas. Oh, and we have lost video. 2 seconds, people. Share content screen. We should be back in 2 seconds. Yeah. Hi. The screen decided to crash, and then we should be back now. Beautiful. So, as I was saying, with highlights and everything in general, you want to think about where your action is going to be happening and how you're going to focus the players there. Lighter areas, that tends to be where the eye goes. Darker areas, you don't pay so much attention to. So that was the base temple. I then repeated that with the raised diocese in the center. Exactly the same process, but with this one, bringing this harder shadow just to really pop everything off the base, because otherwise it would be very flat and you'd lose those details in the bottom there. But with this, then that just helps to raise everything. You get a better sense of elevation as well with getting these hard shadows, I think. So that was, again, same process applied to the next stage. And on we go to the water. So here, we've jumped up a bit. With the background, the main kind of matte, originally it's just a green color at the back, grass textures. So I have a really great set of brushes, Maddie B brushes, which I will drop into maybe the Discord chat that we're having about all this. I'll drop where I got these later on for people who are interested. But these are what I use for all of my grasses and my trees and things like this. They're just a fantastic set of textures. And basically, for the background, play around with these in varying greens until I have a nice pattern that I'm happy with that gives a nice amount of variation. And then on top of that, to build the water, we can drop all this down. Refine, and I've lost the connection again. Fantastic. Sorry about this, guys. I'm not sure why it's doing this, but hopefully we should be back up. Let me know in chat. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm not sure why Zoom's doing that, but anyway. So you have the base line art here, the color block down here, and then this was definitely going back to Scott's earlier question about reference. It really paid quite well here because I wouldn't necessarily have thought of bringing in the muddier sides to the banks, but doing a quick search of rivers, especially kind of jungle rivers and things like this, they're very the sides, kind of this quagmire. So paying attention to that, thought, okay, it's going to be a lot of brown, not necessarily just blue across around the edges. And then bringing in the main body of water on top of that. The reason why you can see one on top of the other, by the way, is because of the opacity of the layers. So when you're working, you can set how opaque the layer is. If I went full opacity with this, it's going to look really bad. But if I drop it back down to about 60 or so, I can see the mud layer below, and you get that nice kind of blend between the two. So all of this is just playing around with the textured brushes in Procreate. So I think for this one specifically, for the water texture, I'd have used clouds because that's kind of a nice mottled feel. And also definitely for this texture layer here, I will have used the water. They have a brush ready for it, and it gives you just this nice kind of marbling that you tend to get with water, where you have the slight raises and things like this. And then just repeat with a couple of highlights. That, I admit, is a bit of practice and playing around and seeing what style and how you like your waters to look. I also included in mine a couple of bodies down here just floating in the river for any of the more eagle-eyed players who might get a sense of what they might be in store for in the future. So with that, with the water done, you'll also notice that I've done the whole water shape, even though I know it's going to interact with this. What I can do very easily is go to my color block. I can select the color block layer for the, okay, Zoom, trying my patience. I will rebroadcast. And we should be back. Sorry about this. But anyway, so yeah, when you want to bring two elements together, what I can do is I can select the water block here. I can go up to this layer here and I can erase it because I've selected. Okay. Wow. Okay, this is getting pretty bad. I don't know why it's decided to test me. Yeah, I'm not sure why it keeps dropping out. Like I tested this earlier with a friend, it was working perfectly fine, but could just be my network. I do live in a very small village in the south of Wales, so could just be trying the network there. Yeah, yeah. I have nothing. I have, yeah. I'll give it a go. Uh, but yeah. Okay, cool. Cheers. Okay, sorry guys, slight technical difficulties. But anyway, what I was trying to say there, hopefully it'll hold with us. I can select this color block down here for the water, and I can just erase the upper layer that I'm going to overlap with it. If I select the line art as well, just to get that, uh, then I can knock that back as well. So then I can get these two elements. I can build them separately. I can get them to interact, and it's non-destructive. I just find it's a very, again, key way of working, non-destructive. Make sure that you can build that into your process. Um, so yeah, let's jump a couple forwards towards. I know somebody was interested in trees as well. So with the trees, the reason, by the way, that I work on so many different palettes on Procreate is because I work on such a scale. These maps are all like 300 DPI. You can print them out to A2, and because of that, Procreate does limit the amount of layers I can have. I can have up to 10 layers. So, okay, that's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it, guys. That's great to hear. But yeah, the reason, so Procreate limits it to 10 layers, which is frustrating, and it does mean I have to break it up even more and, do trees on one layer and rivers and water on another. But overall, I think it's still worthwhile and still a fantastic app for what it does. So with these trees, let's go into a bit more. As I mentioned earlier, and I'll drop it into the Discord later. With these trees, I select a nice leaf that I'm after, take a nice dark color, and then on a non-hidden layer, start to work that in, and that'll give you this nice base dark texture. And you want to do that for your shape, overall shape that you want that bush to be. And then on the next layer, I will just select a nice mid-green tone that I'm after. Select the previous layer, which is the kind of the main shape, so that I don't work outside my lines, and then just gently kind of build it up like this. Are you drawing on a tablet or a mouse? I'm drawing on an iPad Pro, so I have, which for me is definitely the best drawing implement I've used by a long shot. I've used tablets, mouses, and Photoshop before, but there's a disconnect there where you're drawing on a bit of kind of a tablet in front of you and something's happening on the screen. Whereas with a Pro or something like this, where you're drawing directly on the surface, that connection really helps for me anyway for the process. It definitely makes it a lot easier. So yeah, as you can see, that's a really simple and easy way to do a tree. You have a nice texture brush for it. You do a base for it, so you get a nice shadow around the bottom. A little bit of green on top to get the highlights. And then I would just get a darker, maybe a blue or something like this, and a softer brush, a nice soft round. And that's just going to enable me to give it a little bit of a drop shadow just so that it lifts it off the floor there. So you get a sense that it's actually kind of over the ground and the water beside it. So yeah, that is very simply how you can you add trees to the map. And then with this, like I said, I've used various different textured, more of a kind of a larger palm leaf about the place and things. You'll notice the crates that I did on at the start that I was talking about the overall process. Here they are, just dropped in, deleted away the bits that I didn't need, and they sit in the map nicely. And that's the same for all of these assets here in the center. I've made them in exactly the same way, drop them in, maybe add a little bit of extra shadowing if it's needed, and it just helps to fill out and add to the story of the piece ultimately. So yeah, going through, I'll try and wrap up this section of kind of my overall process of this map. It's very quick. This map took me like maybe 12 to 15 hours to do. So this is a very broken down half an hour or so of the process, but hopefully you get the idea for it. So yeah, with the finals touches, for a lot of what I want to do, I quite like very atmospheric maps. I think that it adds a lot more for the players visually. So this was kind of the base colored map that we had. And then I wanted to do a nice night version because who doesn't love night maps? And also it helps challenge the players because they can, dark vision, although most players do have dark vision, but, it limits how far they can see and things like this. But anyway, I grab the whole map, I desaturate it a bit so that it goes a bit gray, add a nice little blue layer with a low opacity to make it more night-like. And then I've also got what's known as a vignette, where you just have an overlay again, mid-opacity, and that, you see that just sits around the outside. That just pushes the view right into the center so that you can actually, again, it's focusing the eye down to where is important on the map. And then I have some nice little lighting details for here, which is some flames with some glows and things like this. Very simple, just low opacity, just blobs of yellow, and it just adds this nice glow. And if you want, you can throw some rain on top as well. That's just a very simple, there's a rain brush, there's a brush for everything, and you can throw that over a little bit of a blur to give it a bit of motion. So yeah, that's how I, in a very quick, broken down way, go from, if we go back to the start, a very rough and ready kind of map through to the finished piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, unless you guys have any more questions about my specific process and how I went through that, I'm going to go now to quick rough maps that you can make at home. If you have a drawing tablet or something like this, fantastic. If you don't and you're doing this on old pen and paper, then you can also use this a similar process quite easily. So these are this is a map or two maps that I produced whilst my players were talking in about the space of 5-10 minutes or so. They were coming up with plans of how they were going to attack these giants that had taken over this inn. So I very quickly I thought about, okay, an inn, right? What shape is an inn? Well, they're mostly square or rectangle, off shape. So I did some very rough shapes. I decided that in two areas, how a giant's going to get into an inn, they're going to smash it open with rocks. So put down two quick circles there as well. And then I grabbed this layer. So that was originally like this. Put it down to like a mid to low opacity so that it disappears into the background a bit. And then start pulling in the details a bit more just to shore it up a bit more. And that's just literally just going over your previous lines with just a little bit more, and then you can get rid of the horrible shapes underneath, and it refines it back to this. And then, I mean, that's fine and great. I think if you're in the moment and as a DM, you need to throw together something very quick, just doing very simple top-down shapes, a quick little bit of refining, and then you're good to go. If you do have a little adding on a bit of color as well, can help separate out the different elements and make it a bit more visual for the players. So you can quickly mark in the walls there, different color, different areas, different colors and things like this. And it's definitely not very pretty, but it gets the job done for the players, I think. So if anybody has any suggestions, maybe in chat, of what they would like me to draw right now, I will happily quickly throw together a map, kind of this level, and show you and just kind of actually show in real time how I'd go about doing that. Weapons rack. I mean, I could certainly. Top-down weapon racks are always tricky. It's a pile of wood with a lot of spiky bits. But I can certainly give okay, teleportation circle. I like the idea of where is the, I can include a weapons rack on the side with a teleportation circle. Whereabouts is the teleportation circle? Teleportation circle, I mean, hill fort as well. Okay, right, let's start putting in these ideas. I wonder if I can combine all three of these. Hill fort with a teleportation circle and a weapons rack. If you were playing Tiny Shipwreck with a flying dragon sprinting, I mean, I'm willing to give that a go. You guys might. I mean, I have 20 minutes. Maybe a bit of a push, but I definitely think we could do kind of maybe a crumbled old round keep kind of hill fort with an old teleportation circle in it. And I'll throw in a cheeky weapons rack on the side for good measure. I could probably quickly put something together like that. This is, by the way, something else that I can include for you all is the textures at the back here. These are just two, I have like loads of kind of watercolor paper textures and things like this. And I've just layered two here at the back. I don't like looking at plain white paper. It's not nice. And especially when you're doing kind of Dungeons and Dragons and things like this, I think some kind of classic old paper texture at the back. If you're making quick rough and ready maps, it just adds a little something as well. So, okay, I'm going to start with not quite a black, just a dark blue purple hard round brush, and we should be good to go. So the other thing I have up at the moment is I have in Procreate, you can set a drawing guide, and you can set the size of it, the pixels, the opacity, the thickness, and things like this. So again, this is probably more of a detailed chat maybe later on in Discord. If you want to know about getting maps ready for print or something like this, there's a lot to consider here, as 1 5-foot square represents 1 inch, and that kind of limits you on paper and things like this, paper sizes. But for the purposes of this map, we'll just go with a nice, this is a good size grid to be using. But that's how you set it up in Procreate. You just have it there and then you can see it whilst you're working, so you can keep in mind, 5 foot. So if I just very quickly do a circle, maybe we'll have like a path or something that kind of zigzags back down. We can also have, the wall's going to be quite a thick old keep wall maybe. It's definitely going to be broken through in places, so that bit's going to be gone. This bit's going to be gone. You're going to be able to see the old kind of rocks that go down to the base down there and there. And you probably want more than one entryway because you want your baddie to be able to sneak off down the back, so maybe there's another kind of like lesser path down there or something. Okay, so so that's super rough. Nobody knows what that is right now, and I'm looking at the time and I have about 10 minutes, so great. So the next stage is just to knock that back in opacity, so it's there, bring up another layer, and then start kind of refining this straight again, and this is all it is. So I want this path to have a bit of a meander to it, so it's going to go up like this, it's going to come down from here. I'm thinking that this is quite a thin path, it's not that wide at all, comes to here. Maybe open that up a bit. And this is going to be the outer rocky outcrop that kind of goes down through it all. Another one there. And so I tend to, with rocks, and to give a sense of perspective, just do some straight lines down here. The idea that this is kind of a radial that's going down and out. I'll just push that back. Yeah, I definitely use a stylus. Yeah. This is iPad Pro with a Apple Pencil on it. You can draw with a mouse. I have done in the past. It is a small nightmare, but it is possible. It's not impossible. So let's just give it a little there. So that for me is kind of the background, and then we're gonna quickly do maybe the keep. I think would be more of a consistent round there. Although what I can do there, so if I have like a round wall there, I can just duplicate that layer, grab it, and with magnetics, make it slightly smaller, move it inside like this, and then merge it down, and then I have a double ring, like a circled wall there. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to quickly hash the floor a little bit, so it's got a bit of something to it, and then I also need to do teleportation circles. So quickly how do teleportation circles work? And look, this is the question. I think maybe some interesting little kind of glyphs and runes are at the outside. So it's like that. We're now going to drop the original. So we've got an idea that it's kind of like this. Everything behind. Sorry, I'm up against the time now. I can see that I have 10 minutes. I want to try and get this teleportation watchtower down, so it's focus time to get the feel for this place. So that is a very quick and very loose old round watchtower. The teleportation circle of some description. We're going to throw in a bit of path coloring down here towards here. And again, this is obviously by no means perfect, but I'm just trying to show what you can throw together in 5-10 minutes or so if you've got it. Because I mean, you know, busy people trying to DM and have a life alongside it, but also give your players something a little bit extra. So that's going to be rocks onto here and around there. And there. Am I going to be able to get the weapons rack in time? This is the question. It's not looking promising. And then I also actually want And so you notice here that everything is under the line work so that the line work stands out on top. And then I'm using, I've got the textured background. I'm using just mid-opacity colors so that you're still getting that texture of the paper through. And then you're very roughly blocking in just different colors just so that everything stands out separate. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a dark green at a low opacity for the background. So this is like at the bottom of the rock face. It's down here. This is, I'm going to pick a lighter one. If you remember what I said before about like drawing the eye towards the center and things like this, lighters around the top and around the center. And I'm going to drop the opacity on that a bit more because I feel like it's, I feel like that might be clashing a bit much. So I'm going to drop that down and drop that down as well. That is a very good question. Is this being recorded? I do not know. I kind of hope almost that it's not being recorded for posterity, but so this little wall within the crumbling keep. So, and I mustn't forget, how long have we got? I've got 5 to 8 minutes or so. I'm going to include a little weapons rack. I feel like I have a weapons rack somewhere in my assets pack that I could drop in. But, so what, you got a weapons rack just there. It's going to have, I mean, these weapons cannot be to scale, can they? Let's make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so it's very rough, but you get the idea. There's going to be a pike in there, a couple of pikes. But you can quickly add little elements like that your players can go, what on earth is that? And then you can say, well, my attempt at a weapons rack in 4 seconds. So very quickly, just going off the prompts that you quickly spammed into chat, teleportation circle, hilltop, and weapons rack, line art, colors. By no means do I imagine this is a particularly masterpiece or anything like this, but it's about giving your players something to go off in very quick and short order, hopefully. It doesn't take too much of your own time, and also is generally just a good place to start. I think if you're getting into it and you want to make more maps, try and make as many and as quickly as you can. You can work on the refining process later on, but sometimes people get stuck in the early stages and they don't push past that and progress. So just having the confidence to kind of like just go, this is fine, and just pushing through it, I think is really helpful. It's a pleasure. Yeah, slightly worrying doing it live, obviously. A couple of technical issues halfway through. But I'm always happy to give it a go. I mean, I don't not like that. I don't not like the idea of an old disused teleportation circle and things like this. Maybe I'll work on this in the next couple of weeks or something. I'll fire this as a finished map, maybe. So yeah, that was very quickly brief rundown on map baking and things like this, how I do it, why I do it. Thanks. So if you have any last minute questions, I guess now would be the time. If not, if we don't get through them, I'm going to be in the Discord chat after this, and I can follow it up there with anything else that people want to know more about. Yeah, I think that is about. That is a very good question. Thank you. I do. Yes, I started about a year ago or so. I have a Patreon account. I'm not sure about it just being iOS. I wouldn't be surprised if it is just iOS on Procreate. So that is my Patreon account over there. For everybody currently watching, I will also drop in this link, which will take you. Oh, Willis, apparently it omitted the tag. If you copy the whole URL and paste that, that is the map that I have free. There's about 13 or so with day and night variations and things like this of my early maps that you're more than welcome to obviously take, borrow, use in your home games. Let me know how they play out. And yeah, if you like what I do and the maps that I'm creating, yeah, consider becoming a patron. That'd be fantastic. Or if you would just want to see what I'm up to and what I'm making next, it's probably best to hit the last link at Instagram, and you can just see what I'm doing there. So yeah, I think I'm very aware that it is now coming up to past. I think we steamrolled it towards the end there, but got it all through. So unless anybody has any other questions, I think I'm ready to finish up. Absolute pleasure. Really was. Yeah, it was. This is the first time doing a quick demo. So it was, yeah, learn a lot, and it was good fun.
Hey Matt, we're back. Thank you so much for showing us that. It was really cool to watch the process, especially at the end, working with the chat there. We're still live.
Yeah, it's good fun.
We're still live right now. Sorry about the issues that were happening with the screen, but I don't think it really took much away from anything. We really got to see a lot there. So thanks so much.
Okay, Ace, that's great to hear.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna take us off the live broadcast. Thanks everyone for watching, and thanks to Fantasy Atlas for being here. Everyone, go check out his Patreon or ask him any questions. I see people are already commenting you in the Discord, so hopefully we can keep the conversation open and get people in there.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for letting me do this. It was a great opportunity, and I'd love to do it again in the future. And yeah, maybe have a chat beforehand about what people want to see a bit more of, and I can work towards that.
Awesome, beautiful. All right. Well,
okay, excellent.